Good evening. I want to call our meeting for July 7th, 4 p.m. work session to order. Chairman Poole will be here in about 30 to 45 minutes, so until she gets here, y'all going to have to put up with me. First on the list is approval of our work session agenda. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second? Second. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed. First up is discussion items for action for July 21st, 2014 meeting. First on the list is Veteran Service renaming of North Cabarrus Park to Vietnam Veterans Park. Tim Terzeski and Londa Storm. I hope I got your name right.
Thank you, Commissioners, for having me here today. I'm here to approach the subject again of the renaming of the Cabarrus County North Cabarrus Park to Vietnam Veterans Park. I know this issue was brought up, I believe, last November, and it was suggested that Mr. Stanley, who can't be here tonight, and he apologizes for that, went to the Parks Commission meeting in January. I think the minutes are in your packet. From that meeting, they voted to recommend the renaming of the park. It's kind of been put aside now for the last 5 or 6 months. We had a discussion about this in our meeting for the Cabarrus Veterans Coalition last month, and they would like to go forward with renaming of the park and bringing it up again at this meeting. Like I said, John Stanley, who is kind of the, I don't want to say ringleader, but he's the leader of the Cabarrus Veterans Coalition as it stands right now. And I know there's been some talk about City of Kannapolis having some issues with it. And at this time, I think it would probably be a good idea for us to get together with them and discuss it if they'd like to do that. I know they've been kind of out of the loop from what I understand in the discussions about this. So, I mean, I'm sure they would be happy to discuss it with Kannapolis if that is necessary, if they have some opposition to it. I think it'd probably be a good idea all the way around to get some communication going on it. You got anything?
Mr. Hennett's here. Would you like to come up and speak to the board?
Sure. Here, is this the proper location? Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for allowing us to speak. I'm here on behalf of the Kannapolis City Council, and we have several concerns about renaming North Cabarrus Park into Vietnam Veterans Park. And we wanted to share those concerns with you now and to suggest, as this gentleman has said already, the City of Kannapolis is standing ready to talk at any time that you also deem necessary to, let's see if we can work together and find a better answer for all of us along the way. So if you'll bear with me just a moment or two here, I sent this letter to Chairperson Poole in the past. I hope she shared you a copy with you of this, but just to get it on the record, I guess.
We all have a copy, thank you.
One of the concerns is that we have is that Kannapolis and Cabarrus County has a memo of understanding, or an agreement, I guess we call it, that dates back all the way to October 19th, 1998. And in that agreement, it suggests that any big decisions about North Cabarrus Park would be made after jointly considering the issues before us. And we would love to participate in some of that discussion, as you all have already suggested. As you know, the City of Kannapolis just recently invested about $3 million in Veterans Park. Many of you were there last year when we dedicated that park. Some 5,000 people or so were there as it was rededicated. In that park, there is over 1,700 names from the variety of military services and various conflicts that are engraved on the circle that signifies the memorial that we believe that we owe to all of those who have paid the ultimate sacrifice. We have left that opportunity open so that we add others as others defend us and perish also. We believe that this park, being only less than 4 miles from Veterans Park that was dedicated last year, will be confusing at least, and probably confusing a lot for people who are in the city, in the county, or visitors. And if we're trying to make this a destination, when I read some of your information, gave me the impression that's what you were trying to do, is to create a destination, it makes it uneasy to find, or more confusing to find, which park you're really headed to as you are headed to a Veterans Park. Also, we have envisioned that that Veterans Park that is already in Kannapolis could include monuments, other memorials to any activity, any group, any event, or any war that has occurred could be a part of our existing park already, and it would make it seem much more consistent. At North Cabarrus Park now, there is nothing there that gives you any impression that there is any connection to veterans or to Vietnam or to any combination thereof. We sincerely believe that as we plan Veterans Park and rededication of Veterans Park, we got in contact with the American Legions and other groups of veterans to see what would be the best solution for us to do. And we are proud of that park, as you hopefully can tell already. We, the city of Kannapolis, are also proud of our heritage as being one who believes strongly in representing veterans in our community. If you had been with us last Wednesday night at Village Park, you would have seen over 12,000 people on the park there celebrating patriotism, celebrating the people who had given their lives and people who were still out there and defending us and the values that we hold dear. So Kannapolis is proud of that. We want to do more to honor those who are in military service or who have given their lives or maybe who have been injured in the military. So we would love to sit down and have a conversation with whoever you appoint or whoever you indicate that could be a party to this discussion. We believe that Kannapolis, there's been some discussion about Kannapolis taking over the operations of that park, North Cabarrus Park. Kannapolis currently owns the land where the park sits and has invested over $500,000 in the construction of that park and in the outfitting of that park. So we believe that in some ways we have earned an opportunity to sit at the table and to discuss this matter about renaming it a park. So at this point, we would like for you to know that our city council is opposed at this point to the renaming of North Cabarrus Park to Vietnam's Veterans Park. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak.
Thank you. Londa, I know you were there at the Parks meeting when the park, everybody agreed to it. What are your thoughts on it?
Well, one of the things that I'd just like to mention that it's in the agreement, and I apologize if I have misinterpreted the agreement that we have. I shared it with Mr. Cook in reference to the large-scale items. I read that agreement as the design and implementation phase of that. So if I misinterpreted that I apologize. Yes, they made the presentation to the Park Commission, and there was a lot of discussion. And actually, it was brought up in reference to the Kannapolis Veterans Park. And it was voted on unanimously to bring to the board, which we did. And we had it at the agenda. It was pulled from February, maybe. I'm not exactly sure which one. And then Tim had been working with the group after that.
If I could give some background on the reason for this push for the park. 2015 marks the 50th anniversary of the start of the Vietnam War. There's a there are events that are going to happen nationwide. The government nationally has proclaimed the next 3 or 4 years as Vietnam Veterans Commemoration. The members of the Cabarrus Veterans Coalition, they're leaders of American Legion, VFW, Vietnam Veterans of America, veterans that aren't Vietnam veterans, but they wanted to put something together to honor the Vietnam veterans. And to be honest with you, they got a pretty raw deal when they came back. I mean, everybody understands that. I benefited from the lessons that we learned because I came along a little bit later, and we were treated very well while I was in the military at the expense of the Vietnam veterans. They want something that has Vietnam veterans on it, and I don't disagree with them. There should be something that commemorates not only the Vietnam veterans but the beginning of the Vietnam War 50 years ago. City of Concord has signed up to be a commemorative partner of that, as is the state of North Carolina has signed up for it. My office has signed up for it as a commemorative partner. There's over 6,000 organizations nationwide that are now members of that commemoration, and there's more daily. They're signing up for it left and right. So it's going to be a big deal. I know the senators have, Senator Burr, Senator Hagan, and Congressman Hudson have expressed interest in getting involved in it also. So it's a big deal. I'm sure they'd be more than happy to discuss the options with the City of Kannapolis, but I believe personally that I don't think it's too much to ask to give something to the Vietnam veterans from Concord and Cabarrus County. That's my view on it.
Well, if you'd be willing to meet with the people in Kannapolis between now and the 21st, and bring us back some feedback before we vote on it on the 20th. That's when we're going to vote on the 21st, right? Because I thought this thing was settled a long time ago, and I knew it was the 50th anniversary of the beginning of the Vietnam War, I think, wasn't it?
Right.
And yeah, you know, Vietnam vets were treated pretty bad when they came back home. They were spit on then, and I don't want us to do it again. So how about the rest of the board?
Yeah, I'm not opposed to, as I said, or, as we have went through this before, I thought it was pretty well organized. I will say that I have had a couple of citizens from Kannapolis call me with concerns, and I can understand where there would be maybe some confusion. So, I would ask for you to consult with the City of Kannapolis and, do that before our next meeting, and, I'll be prepared to vote then if we have the information that you have gathered.
Okay. What does that mean exactly? You said a number of people have signed on as commemorative partners. What does that entail?
Well, there's a application that you fill out, and people that want to be considered commemorative partners in this whole celebration, that's a national celebration, they can sign up for it. They have to have committee members. It has to be an organization with a couple POCs, but it goes through Washington, D.C. There's an office out of the Pentagon that is actually handling this. Mm-hmm. If you sign up for it and they approve it, you get a plaque, you get a flag. You are required to give at least 2 events per year between now and 2017. Picnics, get-togethers, anything like that honors the Vietnam veterans. Mm-hmm. But it like I said, it's straight out of the big DC up there in the Pentagon, and they're doing this nationwide. It's all the services that are involved, retired organizations, retiree organizations, veterans organizations. So it's not just a local thing. It's nationwide.
Right. Well, I certainly agree that we need to honor those folks. I think I probably came within a few months of being one of them myself. So I think it's important. I do understand the City of Kannapolis's viewpoint as far as the confusion. I was at the dedication of Veterans Park there and visit it frequently, and they've done a very nice job of recognizing all the conflicts, and Vietnam is certainly included in that. So I am very much in favor of you folks sitting down the table together and coming up with a solution. You know, some of the folks that I spoke with on the Park Commission, I think because of the amount of time that has elapsed, didn't actually remember having the discussion. So I think it's time to refresh people's memory and see if we can come up with a solution that accomplishes both of those goals and still maintains what the city of Kannapolis has done as well. Thank you.
We can set up a meeting and call a meeting and make sure Mayor Hinnant that they're involved. Would one of our board members like to sit in on that meeting, or just we'll just keep you abreast with a report from the meeting? And then also the commemorative partners, if that's something that you as a board are interested in, we can bring that paperwork back to you as well, so you can consider that. So
I can have it all filled out, send it in, and take care of that. I did it for my office. It's a very simple thing to do.
okay. Well, we'll pull the information back for your 21st meeting. Okay, great.
Anybody else? All right, up next is the BOC designation of voting delegate for NCACC 107th Annual Conference. Mike Downs.
Yeah, this is the biennial goals conference, and they ask that each county have a delegate representing the board at that conference, so that they can bring along the voice of our entire board and vote on some of their initiatives as they move forward. The conference is actually August 14th through the 17th. I believe the only one so far that's turned in any kind of paperwork is Commissioner Morris. That's voiced an interest in attending. So, but it's up to you as a board if you want to select the person to represent you as your delegate. And you would need to attend the conference.
Anybody else? I don't have a problem with Steve going myself.
Steve, if you're interested in serving, I will make a motion to appoint Commissioner Morris as our delegate for the conference.
Okay.
Second.
You second
All-
it? Got it? Okay, you got to.
All in favor?
What?
Aye.
Okay, Commissioner Poole, I just understand it. Commissioner Poole is interested. She is going to be attending as well. If you want to name her as the alternate, that'd be great too. That way, if Commissioner Morris is not able to do it, is that okay with the board?
That's fine with me.
Is that something we need to do today, or is that going to come up on our agenda on the 21st?
No, it'll come up on your 21st.
On
It'll
the
be
20
as a consent.
Right.
As a
Okay.
consent. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
All right, next, corporate extension, Cabarrus County Youth Council revision bylaws. Robert Furr, page 8.
Good afternoon. At the November 13th, 2012 Cabarrus County Youth Council meeting, the Youth Council voted on several changes to their bylaws. Since that time, that was prior to me being here in Cabarrus County, and since that time, none of those changes really made a difference in how they operated until we received some applications for students to be a member of our board that were from at-large and our at-large positions. In our current bylaws state there would be 2 at-large positions, and the vote at that time would say 4. And so in doing that research, it brought to my attention that none of those changes were brought before the Board of Commissioners, and you as a board need to approve those bylaw changes that were voted on by the Cabarrus County Youth Council. So for your reference, just what those changes include, adjusting our at-large seats from 2 to 4 to allow better representation from our other schools in the county, to combine our membership recruitment and our applications committee into one. They have very similar duties, and they have already been working in that area. To add a communications committee, which is the committee that works with our social media and our flyers and marketing with the schools. To clarify what a quorum means on our bylaws as a membership, half the membership plus 1, and then to remove the requirement for a presentation at the Board of Commissioners meetings for November and May. It already is a requirement for our members to attend 2 meetings, and they wanted to have the opportunity to select the dates that are the best appropriate for them when they have actual items that they could share of their impact and things that they have been doing. So there you go.
Do we need a motion on this? Or leave it, just leave it on the consent agenda?
I'm not sure where it's located, but if that's, when you
Well,
get to the end of the meeting
I think it
there.
was on the consent agenda.
Yes.
Okay. But yeah, as long as you don't have any questions, we can move on to the next.
Yeah.
next item.
I just would like to ask, whenever the youth council convenes again, which I know they're probably not holding meetings in the summertime.
Correct.
As I'd mentioned to you before, I would like to see it renamed the Cabarrus County Youth Commission.
We actually have brought that to them,
Okay.
and that's going to be the first item on their agenda at their August meeting.
Great. And for anybody that's curious why is, with the Concord City Youth Council, there's a lot of confusion, so maybe adding, instead of having council and commission, that might clarify some of the confusion.
Thank you.
All right, next we have the county manager, Cabarrus Health Alliance request for additional funding. Sue Yates.
Yeah, Ms. Yates from the Cabarrus Health Alliance is here to talk to you about this item.
Good afternoon. In April, we had exposure to hepatitis A at the Papa John's that borders the Cabarrus County and Mecklenburg County line. We set up a clinic and worked through the weekend to make sure that our residents were vaccinated. In May, we tried to contact the local Papa John's and we did not receive a response. So in May, we sent a certified mail letter to Papa John's corporate offices asking for reimbursement for the funds that we spent on the hepatitis A clinic. We have not received a response from them as of this date, so we were requesting, since the CD is a county-funded mandated service, that we're reimbursed by the county for our funds that we use to pay for staff and a few supplies that we had. Do you have any questions?
Anybody have any questions?
Rich, I have a question for you. What is the liability of Papa John's for these expenses? Do they have any?
I don't know. I had some of the same questions when I read this agenda item over the weekend because I wasn't heretofore aware of it. I think the best I could say at this point is maybe. As I understand what was in the expense reimbursement, there may be some foreseeability and causation issues. I mean, it'd be some sort of a negligence type claim, so you'd have to meet all those elements. I would gather that this local outlet is probably a franchisee rather than, or it may be a corporate-owned store. We don't know, but it's kind of surprising there's been no response at all from them. I thought it presented some legal questions that probably needed to be pursued given the amount of money.
Yeah, I think it seems reasonable for the Health Alliance to request reimbursement from us. It is our obligation, but as far as potentially seeking reimbursement from either the entity itself or their insurance company, that might be something we would like to pursue. So maybe we can look at that for our meeting.
I think a formal demand would need to be made, and certainly to the extent there is that you vote to reimburse, I think we'd want to take some sort of an assignment so that we would be able to pursue it legally if the county chose to do so.
Didn't they send a letter to the headquarters of Papa John's
Yes, sir.
and no response?
No response.
We need to vote on this or leave it
No,
like it
sir.
is? Leave it on the
So,
consent?
what I'm understanding is maybe we pursue that assignment and then that we try to reach out as well. If you approve this, then it would come from your contingency. Is that right?
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next, general fund contribution to school construction Fund, $3,920,000, $112, Susan Farrington.
Before you have an agenda item, based on the budget that was passed on June 16th, the general fund appropriated $3,920,112 to go to the school construction fund for future school projects. So this item will record the receiving of those funds into the school construction fund and also update the project ordinance that goes along with that. So you have a related budget amendment and the project ordinance to pass so that the fund can accept the funds. And the money would sit there in a generic school construction item until specific projects are identified. Then we would be able to transfer them out and spend them to specific departments. So this is just the receiving end of the funds. Any questions?
Great, thanks, Susan.
Thank you. Next is November 2014 General Obligation Bond Referendum, public hearing. Ann Wilson, Steve Cordell.
Good afternoon. The next steps in our process to place on the November ballot $11 million in school GO bonds and $9 million in community college GO bonds is to conduct the public hearing, adopt the bond orders, and adopt a resolution calling for the bond referendum on November 4th of 2014. The board will also need to take action to authorize publication of the bond orders as adopted, authorize publication of the notice of referendum, and adopt reimbursement resolutions for each project. This is the next step in our calendar for our bonds. Any questions?
So is this our first public hearing on these, or we've already had one public hearing, haven't we? Or we've talked about it so much?
Golly.
I think that would set the amount.
I think this is the one that is very specific related to these two bonds, because now you have the dollars set, you have the project set, and it's time to discuss that.
Right, so this, if the public has any sentiments as to whether the amount's too high or too low or whatever, this would be the time for them to express that.
Yes, sir. However, as Mr. Cordell has noted, we cannot increase the amounts.
Right, but they can still express their opinion.
They certainly
about it.
can.
Right, great, thank
They
you.
certainly can. This is an opportunity for that. Good.
Any other questions? Thank you. Next is relocation of funds for school roofing and school projects, $2,738,950.49. Susan Farrington.
Back again. This time, under the direction of our June meeting, to reallocate the Helms Hall money and the Wallace Park money, we have the money freed up. $1.2 million coming from the Helms Hall project and $1.4 million coming from the Wallace Park. So before you have a budget amendment to take care of those funds, moving those funds around, and two project ordinances, one for the construction renovation fund, which removes it from Helms Hall and Wallace Park and puts it into a school area so we can be ready to spend for roofs and for future school projects. And the other one's the capital reserve fund, a project ordinance. That's also included because the capital projects fund for the capital reserve fund actually indicates what projects the money is being spent on, so we had to update that project ordinance also. So you have a budget amendment before you and two project ordinances to reallocate those funds.
Any questions?
Susan, I have one question. I think in correspondence that I had with Ms. Dubois, she had said that there was $1.81 million in the Wallace Park Fund, that was county money, and $1.298 million available at Helms Hall. The Helms Hall number is, $48,000 different, but there is a, $400,000 difference in the Wallace Park number. So, could I ask you about that?
Sure. I've got both those projects outlined here. We have spent a little bit of money in each of those projects. Therefore, for example, the Wallace Park had a $5.6 million budget originally. Of course, that includes the land that we had to capitalize. So we have spent a little bit of money there, about $341,000 And so that's the balance. We cannot move money that we've already spent. So both projects for Helms Hall and Wallace Park, we're just moving the available funds. Then actually on Helms Hall, also we've spent about $47,000 there. And so like there again, we could only transfer 1.2 million as opposed to the 1.29 because we'd spent some money allocation. There's some asbestos and some a conceptual plan there at Helms Hall that we'd already spent towards those projects. Does that answer the question? Okay.
Could you repeat we've spent how much at Wallace Park?
Okay. Get the exact amount here. We had to break out the land, so if I'm not including
Right.
the land purchase, we spent $341,672 towards that project.
And how much on the Helms Hall project?
$47,950.
So that $47,950 is design fees for a new facility and
Conceptual plan and some
Uh-huh.
asbestos evaluation for the
Right.
building.
the $341,000 at Wallace Park, that is not affected by the $350,000 grant that we're going to have to return. Is that right?
That's correct. That money was not spent. 'Cause we
Okay,
had
and
not
that's
received it yet.
reflected in these other
No,
figures.
but it is included in your budget amendment.
Uh-huh.
We had to, get rid of the grant funding in there, and the expenditures that go along with it. So that is, with this budget amendment, that takes it off the books.
Right, so that money will go back to the state?
We have not received it yet, but we went ahead and budgeted
Okay.
to obtain it, but we're not going to be able to receive
Okay.
that, so it
What was
goes away.
What was the cost of the park land down there to the county?
Okay. Well, hold on a second, let me see if I can find that again. 3.4 million, so it's $3,421,393.
3.4 what?
3.4 is actually $3,421,393.
So that land was not donated to the county, correct? I've seen several articles in the paper where it said that land was donated, and I just wondered where that donation came from.
We have a 30-year lease. We're paying $190,000 a year towards the property. For our books, we had to capitalize the full amount in the year inquired. I think it was 2008, if I believe that's right. And we'll go out to 2038, paying $190,000 a year back to the landowners.
Actually, it's a deed of trust. So the county, the property's been deeded to the county, and there was a purchase money mortgage taken back for, I think it was $5.7 million. I think that was right. And it's paid at $190,000 a year on an annual payment, I think is the way it's set up. The value of the property, as I recall, was substantially higher. So there was a certain value amount donated that was worked out as in a way that presumably was favorable to the seller as a tax donation. So the price that the county paid for the property was substantially less than its fair market value. And that may be part of what they were referring to as a donation, because there was, if you go back and look at the agreement itself, it shows a donated amount. And then, of course, the amount that was actually paid on a long-term purchase money mortgage.
I remember a year or two ago, they were going to trade some land down there on the railroad track or something. Had it appraised. And did it not appraise for less than what the county was paying for the land at that time? If I remember right, and I could be wrong.
That's something that the board has discussed before, and that I think you're going to hear about again here within the next month or so. That's correct. In order to resolve some issues with the railroad crossing that runs through that land, Mr. Wallace was going to purchase another piece to provide a new access.
Yeah, this, what I'm talking about didn't have anything to do with purchasing the land for the, this had something to do with trading off some land down there for somebody wanting to put a business down there, if I remember right.
Yes, that was it.
But the appraisal was less than what our tax valuation on the property was, not less than what we paid for it.
Okay.
You're right, Commissioner Burridge. There was another transaction that where a company was looking at coming in and wanted to buy that parcel that's owned by the county, And there was talking about a swap at that point to allow them to have that one that had frontage on 601. It turned out that that deal never came to fruition. But there is this other one that I spoke of to swap land with Mr. Wallace, that being the same parcel with a new entrance off Bethel School Road, I believe.
Now,
And
I just
that's-
remember appraisal coming in less than what, and maybe it was on the tax value. I was thinking it was on the value of what they'd paid for the land. Any other questions?
Rich, just to sort of describe the transaction for the common person at home, would it be fair to say that we paid $3.4 million for the land, and after financing, we will pay back $5.7 million? Is that, that's not, I know from a legal perspective, that's not, you were throwing around those two numbers?
I'm not familiar with that 3.4 number, but the original amount that was to be paid for it, as I recall, and I don't have my file with me, but I think it was $5.7 million, and it was to be paid at $190,000 a year over
30 years.
30 years. That would be right, yeah. And I think that the interest is a very nominal interest amount, and the reason I say it that way is because the IRS imputes interest to transactions, and that number changes, and that issue had to be dealt with at the time to make sure that the transaction, didn't produce interest that wasn't contemplated by the parties. But I know it was pretty nominal. I'd have to go back and look at the papers and to be able to tell you for sure, and certainly can send you a copy of the transactional documents.
We can go back and pull the documentation. The $3.4 million was the purchase price of the land. From our perspective, there is no interest cost, but because of the IRS transaction, they had to take that $190,000 payment and split it between principal and interest for the taxable portion in regards to the Mr. Wallace. So from our perspective, it's actually worth, but the transaction has an interest component, and we can get you a copy of it. It's very complicated with the IRS transactions that went through, but from our perspective, we're paying for what the price of the land was with no interest cost, but he had to have an interest cost on his side for tax purposes.
How many acres of land was down there?
90.
You don't have to get me the agreement. I just wanted to make sure. We were throwing around a couple numbers, so I wanted to make sure that people, but so 5.7, are you not sure where that number comes from?
I believe that was the true value of the land, but we only paid the 3.4.
Okay.
And the differential on that is the tax write-off he got for the donation portion of it, and then there's the interest part where he had to do with the IRS, because we actually had to go through the local government commission for this lease because of all the tax transactions that went through, and it was kind of a very complex transaction.
It was very convoluted, and I may have confused you all when I said that the value was higher than that. The number I remember was the 5.7 million, because that's what's in the documents. All the tax ramifications and component parts of that was really more for
his deduction purposes.
Correct.
And in his income purposes.
Any other questions?
Yeah, Commissioner Birch, we do intend to bring that swap of property back to you in August so that we can go ahead and make the swap so that in the future, in future years, if future
That's
boards.
for the road?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right. All right, up
That
next.
will, excuse me, Commissioner Briggs, that will actually, when that transaction occurs, it will actually reduce the amount that the county would owe on that purchase money mortgage. There's a differential that would end up being a credit against that deed of trust.
Okay, thank you. Up next, request to purchase county-owned property, Jonathan Marshall.
The county was approached by Bill Rinker, who is here today with Rinker Commercial Properties, about purchasing some property that the county owns across from the courthouse entrance. There are some pictures included in your agenda packet, but if you're not familiar with it, there's a sidewalk that leads to our parking lots 3 and 4. This is the land. Mr. Rinker represents the Bright Parson LLC, which owns the building that is addressed at 70 and 82 Union Street South. So this is land directly adjacent to them. They actually own some of that strip of grass already. But they wish to purchase an additional 1,000 square feet of that would front on the sidewalk and run directly adjacent to our sidewalk. So the county would retain access to those parking lots, but they would be purchasing that strip of undeveloped land for purposes of adding that to their holding with the building next door. They have offered $6,000 for that. You do have the ability when you're approached on an issue like this, to go through an upset bid process where that bid, if you choose to accept it, and again, your acceptance is merely starting the process. It is not a final approval. But if you accept it, you start the process by which it's advertised at that price and that amount of land for $6,000, and other interested parties then have the opportunity to present an upset bid that, in essence, has to exceed this amount by 5%. It's 10% on the first 1,000 and 5% on each 1,000 after that, but it comes out to about 5% in addition. Each time there is a new upset or a new higher bid, the 10-day period restarts and is re-advertised until we go through 10 days without a bid that's higher. Once we reach that point and you have what is the highest qualified bid, it would come back to the Board of Commissioners for your action. At that point, you may choose to accept it and authorize the sale, or you may choose to reject any and all bids.
That includes the original bid, too.
That's right.
That one's always, it's considered conditionally accepted, but it's still open until the process is complete.
Would you like us to point it out on the map? I mean, here's the pictures here. If you're not familiar, it's right directly across the street from the courthouse. And it's the alleyway.
The best view is really that street level view. There's a bail bondsman to what would be your left, or the left of the picture, and then 1782 is the two-story building to the right of this property.
This is the bail bondsman. Here's our current sidewalk that goes back to the back parking lot. And you got a plat map here, I believe, but this is the location. This part of this green area. You're walking towards the parking lot, it'll be on the right of the sidewalk.
Is that the average cost of a square foot of land for downtown Concord?
I originally, in dealing with Mr. Rinker, went back and looked at what the appraised value for the land underneath 70 and 82 Union Street was, and this offer is based on that value. So it's using our tax values, which that we appraise their current land to determine a value for this.
County might not ever have a need for it.
I do not foresee any need for that. Again, we have that sidewalk. If we were to need to widen the sidewalk, we would retain the strip of land to the other side going towards the other building, so we could widen that sidewalk if necessary there. We have, in the long-range CIP, beyond 5 years, talked about a parking deck, but again, the access way that we would retain would allow us still access to a parking deck should one ever be built.
Any other questions?
So, am I correct? We'll be taking county property that currently we're collecting no property taxes on and paying to mow and maintain and putting it in the hands of a private property owner that will pay property taxes and it will have a use that will enhance our downtown. Did I understand correctly? This is for outdoor dining for an adjacent restaurant?
That's correct.
Yeah, so I think we win on all counts, so I'm very, very much in favor of it.
It's a patio. Every restaurant needs a patio.
Yeah.
This does not, I did not see anywhere in the statute, Mr. Cook can correct me, require a resolution, but I prepared a resolution that will become part of your packet.
Jonathan, are we required to do the upset bid procedure, or is that one process by which we could sell this property?
It is one process. The other one that we considered is there's one under economic development where you can consider the employment that restaurant would then offer and the average wage of a number of employees and the wages of those employees. But as we looked at this, it looked like the upset bid process may be the best way to approach it and be most consistent with the way the board has acted in the past.
So that's what you're advising us to do, is the upset bid process?
I think that the upset bid process is most appropriate for this.
Okay. I would like to make sure that, anybody that has an interest gets a chance to say that they have an interest before we get going, and I think that's a very fair way to do it, so I appreciate that.
Any other questions? All right, next we have the Planning and Development of Irma C. Lomax Incubator Farm Public to Private Transition, Kelly Sifford, Jonathan Marshall, and Roland McReynolds.
I'm simply going to introduce my part of it and then move, since we have a number of people speaking to this topic. The budget, of course, eliminated the funding for this farm. Your action was to then, we would supply water. In order to supply water, we have had to leave the power on to the 2 wells. We also have a building out there that our building maintenance supervisor is advised that we should have some air conditioning in at this point in order to keep that asset up. And although it's not accessible to anyone who's there, we do have some power to that building so that we can keep the air conditioning going in it. But at this point, it's locked and no one is able to use it. The other items that we have out there have either been removed, the tractor, other implements have been removed and secured at the infrastructure and asset management, or the cooler, ice machine, and those things have all been turned off. And that's where it's been left at this point. Now I'll turn it over to Kelly.
Since that time, we have gotten a proposal from Aaron and the Carolina Farm Stewardship Association to try to move this program into a nonprofit status. And so from there, I'll let them describe what they're proposing to you.
Certainly. Carolina Farm Stewardship Association is a member-based, farmer-driven nonprofit with a mission to promote local and organic agriculture in the Carolinas, including education and support for new farmer programs. This is an organization that got its start in 1979, so an established organization. And CFSA is willing to assume the role of fiscal sponsor for the Lomax Farm, assume immediate operational management of the Lomax Farm, and assist in the development of a long-range plan for its continued operations. And we're joined here with some of the individuals who have helped us put together that plan. Ann Morris represents Rowan Cabarrus Community College. Thomas Gentry is here from UNCC, and also Director Robbie Furr of Cooperative Extension, who has been involved with the Lomax Farm from its inception, as well as the overall development plan you received. But at this time, I'd actually like to turn over the presentation to the Executive Director of Carolina Farm Stewardship Association, Mr. Roland McReynolds.
Members of the Board of Commissioners, thanks very much for the opportunity to speak here today and share a little bit of information about CFSA and our interest in this, in the work at the Elma C. Lomax Incubator Farm. Carolina Farm Stewardship Association's activities include a lot of education for beginning farmers, for existing farmers, and research to address the needs of beginning farmers. And this has been an issue that has been identified as one of significant importance by our membership, which elects our board of directors and governs our activities. So in 2007 through 2009, we conducted research on farm incubator models in other parts of the country, did an inventory of incubator farms within the Carolinas, which was, and provided some consulting to groups that were interested in setting up these farms, including at the birth of the Lomax Farm. Our contractor at that time provided some consulting. We provide regular educational conferences. We have 2 annual conferences on organic production methods. We have on-farm research programs. We provide trainings, workshops, and technical assistance on production issues, on farm planning, farm business management, and marketing. And we help to launch marketing infrastructure to increase the opportunities for beginning farmers and organic farmers to access high-value markets for local and organic food. We have launched private farmer and/or producer-run businesses that have served this role in the market of opening up access to markets for smaller scale producers who independently could not access those markets as individual farm entities. So we have been aware of and supportive of the work at the Elma C. Lomax Incubator Farm. From the very beginning, our staff have presented trainings at the farm and as part of the farm's educational programs. And we recognize that there are excellent assets here available for farmer education and for new farmer business development. And we're very interested in any opportunity to continue the opportunity for those assets to be put to that use. And for these reasons, our board has authorized CFSA staff to offer assistance to stakeholders in Cabarrus County, including to act as a fiscal sponsor for the duration of the 2014 growing season, so that we can assist and provide any assistance as needed to the community in identifying a way to move the Lomax Incubator Farm forward as a private nonprofit entity. We are committed to working with Cabarrus stakeholders to develop a viable long-term business plan to continue the operation of the Farm Incubator Program. I welcome any opportunity to answer questions about what that might look like or what concerns you all might have.
Any questions?
Aaron, I wanted to say to you that I apologize to you. I had the wrong number in my summary. I had said about $400,000 was spent out there last year, and there was some discrepancy about that afterwards. And I had gone back to the county and asked them, and I had that number wrong. We were transitioning from a multi-year budget to a single-year budget on that, and I did not realize that. So I apologize to you for that. I did go back and ask to follow up with that because that was an area that I had heard that there was some discrepancy, and they said that the actual expenses out there last year was about $170,000 net after you. I think it was about $175,000, and we had about $4,000 revenue out there. So so I do apologize to you for getting that number wrong. I believe it's important to tell people when you're wrong and apologize, and I do that. So
I appreciate it.
yeah. I think that this is a excellent compromise. I think, I think you provided a wonderful service out there. I just didn't think that the taxpayer should be responsible for it. And so I think I appreciate you, Roland, coming up with a compromise for us. I have a couple concerns about the way that the transaction will work. And it's not really from an operational perspective. It's from a little bit of a legal perspective. And we got I think almost an answer to that question today, but the deed, I'm sure you know this, Aaron, for the people at home, the deed by which the county got this property has a deed restriction on it, which says, this property has been conveyed by the grantor for the exclusive purpose of establishing a public park for the co-enjoyment of the outdoors by the natural wildlife inhabiting the area and the citizens of Cabarrus County, North Carolina. The real estate may only be used for the purposes stated herein and shall revert to Franklin D. Lomax, Betty Jewel Lomax Dobson, and Alexander Hamilton Lomax if the required purpose is not observed and continued. So I think that as it was being operated was sort of a gray area. Moving this from a county-operated facility to a leased private nonprofit, I think, changes that from a gray area to a more black and white area. However, today we received a email from Franklin Lomax, who is one of the people noted on that, saying he has no problem with this structure at all, that he encourages it and supports that, and that really puts my mind to ease. What I would like to see before the next meeting, before we vote on this, is the other two people stated in the deed. I'd like to know, Rich, from a legal perspective, if they have any interest in the property anymore. It could be that Franklin bought out their other two interests. It could be a variety of things, but if they do have an interest in the property, I'd like to get their approval for this also, just so we can make sure that everybody's approved of what we'll do with the land. I would like to see that, well, let me also say that I really appreciate the fact that you have thought of revenue streams to fund this. I particularly like the fact that you have participation fees, product sales, corporate sponsors, events, and other fundraising opportunities. I think that's important that you all are handling this. I think that's wonderful. I would like to see the county get reimbursed. I did really go through and do a good analysis of what monies have been spent out there. It looks like most of the money spent out there was spent through a private grant through the Cannon Foundation. So clearly, if they're okay with it, that's not our fight, right? But the county has spent some money out there on capital expenses, not operational expenses, but capital expenses. I'd like to see the county get reimbursed for the capital expenses that we've put out there. And then, I don't anticipate this, but this property was deeded to Cabarrus County for use as a park. Cabarrus County right now is not looking at building any more parks. If we were, we'd go down and build Wallace Park. But this will be taking the property away from potentially the people who might like to see it used as a park and moved over into a nonprofit. And so if anybody has a serious concern about that, I'd like to hear about it in the next 2 weeks. And if absent a major outpouring, then I will feel comfortable in doing that also. But those are the concerns that I have about moving this over. And once again, I apologize to you about the number and appreciate all that you've done to make this a workable plan.
One follow-up, if I may. In 2009, the Board of Commissioners passed a resolution that set aside funds that, monies that come from the sale of agricultural land, leaving present use valuation. And that money was specifically earmarked for two purposes. One purpose was the purchase of conservation easements, and I think some of that money was allocated at the last commissioners meeting for that particular purpose. The second purpose that was noted in that resolution was support of the local food economy and a revitalization of that economy. And as such, I think funds spent specifically from that fund would be most appropriate to stay in use at the farm. And so I'd like the commissioners to consider that as an alternative. General funds, I know that that's a different story, but funds that were specifically allocated as a part of that resolution for that use and then put to that use, I think should be considered to be able to continue in that use.
We can get that breakdown. Mr. Newton, you're referring to capital items that were purchased with that money? Is that what you're?
Correct. Out of the Cabarrus County Agricultural Development and Farm Preservation Trust Fund that was set up to receive those funds.
Okay. We'll get those numbers and get it to the board for your review.
Is the electricity and water still on out there?
The electricity is on. It runs the well, and it's keeping the temperature controlled in the office, however the office.
How about the crops out there? Can people get to their crops?
They can get to the farm, and they have access to water.
Okay.
They cannot use the office or the freezer or
Equipment? Or any of the tools?
The freezer's turned off?
Yes, sir.
Why can't we turn it back on?
That would be a decision that the board would need to make.
Well, I'll make a motion, we turn, I don't want to see them people lose their crops out there. I'd make a motion that we turn if the freezer's needed, that we turn it back on temporarily until it's moved over to the private sector.
Before you move any further in that discussion, you would need, if you're going to make a motion and then vote on it and make a decision tonight to do that, you'll need to suspend your rules to be able to do that. So.
All right, can we do it on the, well, if we don't do it tonight, it's going to be
2 more weeks.
2 more weeks before they can get in there.
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Burge.
Vice Chairman, I would make a motion that we suspend the rules to take action on this item now.
Do I have a second? I'll second it. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Is that 3? Yes. Okay. All opposed?
No.
3-1, motion passes.
Larry, Commissioner Burge, you just made a motion to suspend the rules. Now
Well, I know, we're going,
Yeah, okay, good.
I mean, the motion to suspend the rules passed, okay? All right, now I'm going to make a motion to turn the electricity to the cooler back on out there to where people can use it until the private organization takes it over.
I would second that motion if you would amend it to include that we restore all facilities at the farm, including the ice machine, the cooler, and the other equipment that they're using pending the outcome of our vote at our meeting on the 21st.
Yeah, I would say any equipment they need out there that was there that they were using, that they continue to use it until it's turned over to a nonprofit.
And I second that motion.
Well, as part of discussion, I would say that I would not have brought this up but for the, this particular motion, but they have a lot of very niche equipment out there that our average farmer in Cabarrus County doesn't have access to a full walk-in freezer. Do you have a tractor that was made in Italy out there from what brand is your tractor from Earth Tools?
It's a Grillo. It's a walk-behind tractor. They're only made there.
Yeah, an Italian tractor. They have got, a variety of things out there that were going on that the average farmer in Cabarrus County does not have, and every dollar that we spend out there on things like that is coming out of people like that's pockets. And so if our farmers are paying taxes on those things for it to go to these specialty items that they don't even have access to, I have a real problem with that, and I would vote no on that motion. If it's taken over by a nonprofit and the nonprofit wants to pay for those things, be my guest, they're a nonprofit, they can do what they want to. But an Italian tractor and a walk-in freezer facility for 1 acre lots, when our own farmers don't have access to those things, I don't think that they should be obligated to pay for such things.
Didn't you say it was a walk-behind? You said it was a walk-behind tractor?
Yes, sir. It's a walk-behind tractor.
Like a tiller?
Well, it's
a little bit bigger than a tiller.
It's a big tiller. Let's put
Okay.
it that way. It's a strong
But you still
tiller.
walk, and you don't ride it. You walk behind it.
Correct. It was actually an attempt for us to decrease the cost of operations of our main tiller because it will be cheaper to operate than our regular Kubota tractor.
And, I mean, a cooler is not that expensive. My concern is that these people went out there and planted their crops, and I think we ought to give them a chance to continue until they gather all their crops in. I have a problem with just shutting everything off all of a sudden at one time and not give them the opportunity to go out there and after they put all this labor and work into it. I know what it is to raise a small garden, so I'm in favor of operating until, it's not going, how long is it going to be before they can turn it over to a private organization? 30 days?
I would think that a transaction of that sort could be concluded in 30 days if we hustle on it.
So how much we talking about fund-wise? It's not that much.
I don't have that number available, but we can get that to you. It'd be the power bills.
All right, we got a motion. All in favor, say aye.
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 I'm sorry, could you restate, I apologize for being late. Could you
This is a
restate the
motion, this is a motion to open the facility back up at the Lomax Farm for the people to go in and continue to gather their crops, have the power on, have their cooler running, and use the equipment.
Okay. Aye.
All opposed? Aye. Motion passes 4-1.
I've got some questions. Moving on to what we were originally talking about with this agreement. So is this something that can happen within less than 30 days?
We are prepared to move as quickly as possible, and 30 days seems more than reasonable, yes.
Okay, and your organization is aware of all the operating expenses that will take place?
We have reviewed the budgets. An essential part of any sort of negotiations over the next couple of weeks will be to identify what are the key costs that must be paid for immediately, where we will get insurance, transferring any agreements between the individual farmers over to CFSA as opposed to the county. So those will be the types of issues we'll be trying to address in the near term.
Okay. And so what do you think the operational cost will be? I know reviewing our budget, is it going to be, are you planning on something similar, or are you going to?
I would say we would be looking at something comparable in the near term. Organizationally, we see a whole lot of potential with the incubator farm as a site for conducting research and on organic production practices, on farmer business management best practices. So I can see an expansion of the program in the future to meet the needs of beginning farmers in the region. But in terms of the current, keeping the current activities ongoing, I mean, it would be less than the budget for last year, and on a just sort of keep the lights on basis, and be very comparable to that on an ongoing basis.
Right. Okay. Well, I think that the county has tried to transition this into more of a private organization and private entity over the years, and so I think this is, I think it's a good idea for this to transition in. I don't think this should be a function of the county, so I appreciate you guys stepping up to take over and transition, as I said, this to a private organization. I guess that's all the questions I have.
So we're going to try to have it done within 30 days, correct?
Rich, may I ask you?
Move in that direction as quickly as we can.
Rich, I have a legal question for you. Can we do a long-term lease on that property as county property? What are the requirements from a legal perspective for us to transfer a property like that?
We have a good bit of latitude with reference to real estate transactions with county property to a nonprofit. So the usual rules that relate to a long-term lease, under the statutes, a long-term lease is considered one over 10 years. And that has to be, in order to enter into one of those kind of leases, you actually have to go through the process for actually selling the property. It's treated the same way legally. But the rules are different with a nonprofit, and I haven't had any discussion yet with Mr. McReynolds, but my understanding is they're a 501c3 organization, and we should be able to work out those issues and be able to do it on a contractual basis.
Mr. McReynolds, what duration would you like for the lease to be?
Well, I think that is an open question for the near-term community stakeholder engagement. You have some documents that lay out some vision for the long term for the facility, but I think the engagement of an advisory board to map out what those durational parameters would be, as well as other elements of activities to go on the farm, on the site. So I would be uncomfortable making stating a number right now, but I believe over the course of negotiations and engagement with an advisory committee and other groups in the community, we could identify that number.
Would you expect it to be less than 10 years?
I would not expect it to be less than 10 years, no.
Okay. So that will, if it's more than 10 years, Rich, we'll go into the legal procedure that you were talking about and potentially have to do some bids and things like that?
No, I don't think it'll matter if the lessee is a nonprofit, is what I'm saying.
Okay.
See, under the normal rules, a lease of more than 10 years, you have to treat it like a sale. But there are exceptions if it's a nonprofit or another governmental entity. There are a number of exceptions for different types of groups who come in and would presumably operate that property or lease it in sort of a quasi-governmental way, if you will. I mean, it'd be pursuing some of the same functions with the property that the county would if it continued to possess it. So, we'll check on that to make sure, but generally with nonprofits, we have a lot more latitude to structure a transaction without having to go through the normal sale procedures.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
From a time frame perspective, we've talked about 30 days. Of course, our regular meeting where we will vote on this will be in 2 weeks. Will we be able to have everything in order to vote on that at that time so that they can proceed with as little additional disruption as possible, or is it going to take more than that?
I would think that we would at least have the structure of it for you to consider in 2 weeks. Now, there wouldn't be a fully formed document for you to approve, but many times you don't approve those anyway. You approve the structure and then you leave it to staff to basically get the documents together, and then they're ultimately executed later. So I do think, I haven't talked to this gentleman yet. I was just introduced to him through an email this morning, but I knew he existed. But certainly I think there are a lot of folks that would like to see this happen quickly because of the ongoing farming operations out there. So I would think that we could have that for you by the 21st.
So through the action of this board today, and hopefully what will occur then, they can resume operation effective immediately as they have been in the past.
That was my understanding of the vote you just
Okay,
took, yes.
great.
It keeps everything the way it was, at least for the farmers to continue to work their crops while we put this other transaction into place.
Great, thank you.
I would think that with the power and the water been available out there, no crops have been lost, have they?
I don't know. I guess that's a question for Mr. Newton.
I can't speak to that directly. The loss of refrigeration did hurt us. It meant that people were moving crops around and trying to find other alternatives to the walk-in cooler that was alluded to. So I can't say either way on that with a definitive.
Okay. Any other questions? All right. Thank you very much. Chairman Poole, you want to start with number 4? All right. All right, I need approval for regular meeting agenda. Everybody looked at it? Anything you want to change?
One question on new business, on the renaming of the park. Did we specify that they would have feedback by that time, or should that be?
I think they were going to have, wasn't they?
We can try to make that happen, yes.
Okay.
Anything else?
I move for approval of the agenda as presented.
Have a second?
Second.
All approved, say aye.
Hold on, sir. Hold on. Right now, you've already waived the rules to reinstate the power and the water at the farm. And that was on the consent. However, if we want to talk about the lease and the other, you might want to move that to new business for discussion. You've already approved it.
Okay, number 7.
Yes, sir, I would recommend that you move
Move it
that.
to new business.
Yes, sir.
All right, that'll be number 3 on the new business.
Right.
Any others? All right, all approved, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, I need a motion to adjourn. Second, anybody second?
Second.
All approved, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed. Meeting adjourned. Thank everybody for being here.